Hello and welcome back. Today's book discussion is going to be on writing a memoir of the craft by the one and only Stephen King. And the reason that I chose this book off my spiritual bookshelf is that I am guessing that if you, yes you, are watching a YouTube video on books, or spiritual books, that you enjoy books, first of all, and that there's a decent probability that you at some point in your life have thought about writing a book or a manuscript, even if it was a fleeting thought. So although this book here may not seem like a spiritual book, creating is spiritual and writing is creating. So from my perspective, it was a perfect fit. So, as always, I am Tina Moody before we get started, and I am the author of The Spiritual Awakening of an Analytical Mind, which is a guide for people like me who are stepping onto their path of self-discovery. In addition to that, I put out a newsletter each and every Monday morning. It's a quick newsletter. And if you go onto my website, tinalmoody.com, you can find both my book and you can subscribe and receive that newsletter. So those are the things that I have going on currently, and I would love for you to join my adventure. But let's get started in the meantime. Although the majority of what we're going to discuss today is on writing, and that is actually broken up into two parts naturally by itself. The other piece that I'll discuss at the end, so hold on for us, is the other books that kind of made their way when I started getting serious about writing, and I would recommend a lot of them. This is not an exclusive list by any means. It's just what came to me. So first, this book. Although I am not a horror book or movie person, I am a Mainer, and Stephen King is a Mainer, so we all kind of like to claim him. And so as I began writing, I picked up his book. Now, is this a new book? Not by any means. This book has been out for, I think, next year will be 25 years. So I read this in 2020, which would have been the 20th anniversary of the book. And I found it interesting as a Mainer. I found it helpful as a wannabe writer, because what he does is he breaks it into two. So the first part of the book is his memoir, first 100 pages or so. And then the second part is a toolbox for us wannabe writers. So let's start with the memoir. Whether you're a Mainer or a fan of his in general, like, it's a fascinating piece because he takes you way back in time. And like anything, maybe not everything will hit for you, but you can take out nuggets here and there. I did not go back in prepping for this and reread that portion of the book, but what has stayed with me over these last 4 years that I read this was that he was such a tenacious young person who knew he wanted to be a writer. And regardless of our age or what genre we're writing in, I think we have a lot to learn from him with that part. So he passionately submitted short stories to different publications. So remember, we're talking a different time because I think he's in his 70s now. And his bedroom was on the second floor of, I'm envisioning like an older house that with a cape or something with the slanted ceilings, and he had a nail in the wall, and he would post or stick through that nail all of his rejection notes or slips. And those rejection slips eventually turned to getting some feedback or handwritten note with them. And he never looked at it as a failure. He took that opportunity to grow from it. And I think at one point he said the nail turned into a spike in the wall because he had so many. But I thought that was a great reminder that stick with it. We all need to have thick skin. And actually that story inspired me, and I submitted a couple short writing pieces and nothing happened, and I didn't get all sad about it or put all my eggs in that basket kind of thing. The example that he gives in the book is that, and again, a different time, pre-digital time, that it was a rejection that he received, but the note was that manuscripts are sent in with paper clips, not staples. And he said he never sent in another manuscript with a staple again. So that was just a small feedback, but he took from it what he could. And I thought that was great. The second half of the book really gets into him offering us his routines, suggestions, and he does get into a little bit of grammar, but he leaves the grammar to this grammar police. And we actually had this in the house, but I would recommend picking it up. It's William Strunk and Jr. and E.B. White, and it's The Elements of Style, and you can grab that for next to nothing someplace out there, probably on Amazon or Europe. I bet all the bookstores have it as well. So that he kind of sent us that way for any grammar feedback. What else? What stuck out to me most and was most helpful to me at the time of reading this, within this toolbox phase of it, was his routine. Now, I just want to remind everybody, whether you're on a spiritual journey or you're on a book journey or whatever journey you're on, you can take nuggets from people, but we're all different, and we should come up with our own rituals or altars or whatever it may be. So I feel the same way about him, even though he's obviously been very successful. So, I just think we're different. He's writing 500 to what was it, like 1,100 pages. Like my book was 160-ish pages. So vastly different things, fiction, nonfiction, all that. So I'm going to find what works for me. And he just pounds out these books anyway, right? So here's, as a first-time author, what I found was that it's really about getting into your groove. We write as many days as we can in our consistent sacred space, we'll call it, for X number of words or X number of pages. So that sacred space, I've read it different places as well, but he encourages you to make it your space, where for him it was a door. If that door was shut, everybody knew he was in the writing zone, kind of thing, and not to come in. So you have to have respect for your space if you expect other people to respect your space as well. Now, he listens to rock music. He's writing horror stories. He's a music guy. I don't listen to rock music. I may put on, I don't know, whale sounds or Hertz for my sacral chakra or something like that. But you find what works for you. I light a candle. I doubt he does. Maybe he does. I don't know. So create the space that makes your writing situation, makes your space conducive to writing. How's that? Maybe that's better said. And anyway, and I think it can morph over time as well. Now, he writes 2,000 words a day and won't get up from his space until he does. In the heart of me writing, I would shoot for about 1,500. He recommends for somebody just starting out 1,000 words a day. He's a morning writer. He works out and then does morning writing. So say he sits down at 8 or 8:30, he goes until lunch, gets his 2,000 words. He said, now that he's getting older though, it may take him a little bit longer. So sometimes it's grabbing lunch and sitting at the desk, but he won't let himself leave until he does his 2,000 words. I shot for 3 hours and did as much as I could, but I feel like if I don't write in the morning, my day can get away from me and maybe I won't get it done, and I don't beat myself up for it. Again, we're coming from different places. I attempted to write, say, 3 or 4 days a week, maybe sometimes 5. On a good week, I'd get 5,000 words in. But again, my book was much shorter, right? He writes every single day, 7 days a week. He said in the book, I think just to appease somebody that was interviewing him, that he took Christmas, his birthday, and something else off. He said that's a lie. He's like, I still write on those days. So there's that. He said he recommends that you have a rough first draft done in no more than a 3-month period of time. Otherwise, it gets stale. So again, we have to figure out what works for us. And if we're doing this on the side, then you make accommodations. Don't beat yourself up for it. And yeah, the other thing that I think is good that he does is he does work out. We have these vessels and they operate better. The healthier they are, eating well, drinking your water, working out. And the more you can do that, I think you're in a better state for your writing. The second key that I took from his advice is this. I'm going to quote him here. If you want to be a writer, you must do two things above all others: read a lot and write a lot. There's no way around those two things that I'm aware of, no shortcut. And I took that to heart completely. As I began, or before I began this journey, all of a sudden books started showing up. And I think it's important to consume as much as you can. He indicates that it's important to read a range of books as far as genre and authors, because it's going to help you sort through what type of writer you are. And then you need to write a lot to practice and see what fits for you and what doesn't fit. Not almost, but creating your own style of writing. So you're not going to get there if you don't read a lot and you don't write a lot. He made the point that early on he found, at different points in life, different authors that he was a huge fan of, and so he'd read a lot of those books, and then he would take on the style of that person, but it was temporary, and then that might evolve into somebody else, and eventually you get to finding your voice, your tone, your style, and your unique voice, I would say. So I've kind of taken that to heart and try to read as much as I can, which is part of why these videos have turned into the books, because there's books that I want to read and there's books that I have read but haven't read in a long time, and where I'm getting ready to dig into writing again. It's a good refresher for some of these, and that I can share them with you. It reminds me of the good nuggets that are in there. And then he recommends to log 4 to 6 hours a day between reading and writing. So when his writing day stops, he then jumps into reading, or probably marketing and all that stuff. Because when you kick out a book, by the way, that's not the end of it. You're your biggest salesperson and marketer. So there's a whole other world that you have to do in social media, and I'm still not great at it by any means. The last thing I will mention, that he encourages us to write what we love, to be truthful and authentic, that don't create something because you think that that's the thing that's hot right now in the market, or because, so it'll be more lucrative. Like, don't do that. Don't sell yourself out, because then writing is going to be kind of more of a chore. Because if you follow your love, it's easy, it's fun, it's not painstaking to sit here and write for X number of hours. Sometimes it's painstaking to get yourself started, because we all have fear for a variety of reasons. But just write what you love. And of course, there's many more nuggets within the book, but you can grab it and find what nuggets speak to you. And I want to really quickly touch on some of the other books that I think were helpful for me, and I'm touching back on them. If you see some of the videos that I've posted, it's because I'm kind of revisiting some of these. So obviously we have this one. We talked about the grammar book, because for those of us that haven't written in a long time, and I was not an English person in high school, and I was a business major, and I did write business stuff, but man, I forgot a lot of my grammar rules. So this is a good one. I have a video on this book from a few months ago. I would pull it up if you haven't listened to it. It goes into a little bit more detail, but The Book You Were Born to Write by Kelly Notaris is absolutely fabulous. I used the structure to write my book. Without it, I think it would have been much more painful to do. For somebody that hadn't written, it's fabulous. It does focus more on nonfiction, particularly transformational fiction, kind of like what my book is. However, she does talk a little bit about fiction books, and the most important thing is as well that she talks about platforms, because we all, whether we're a traditional publisher or published author, or a cooperative like I was, which is hybrid, or self-publishing, we all need to create platforms, and she goes into a lot of the marketing stuff. So this book I can't recommend enough. It was like a writer's Bible for me as I was writing. Bird by Bird I actually read after I wrote mine. I was Anne Lamott, by the way. It's a fabulous book. It's been out for 25 plus years. She's funny. It's great humor. Again, geared more to fiction than nonfiction, I would say, but just a good read, and I would recommend this one as well. Let's see, The Artist's Way, I've already done a video on. The reason I would recommend this is that we get all blocked up for our creativity. Writing is creative, as we just said at the start of this. And this gets you writing. It unblocks you to allow the writing to come through. So there's that aspect, and just gets you in the habit. It's a 12 weeks program, excuse me. You don't have to stick to it to the T, but I would recommend this if you're going to set this as a goal in 2024 or 2025 to get a consistent writing program ritual that you can then write a manuscript. I would recommend this as a great place to start. And lastly, I did a video on this one too, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. Subtitle here, Creative Living Beyond Fear. We all have fear of failure, fear of putting ourselves out there. It's very vulnerable to write a book. And she has great humor as well. She talks about catching inspiration. She writes a lot of fiction books. She did write the big nonfiction book, Eat, Pray, Love, that kind of threw her into the next stratosphere. But there's some great nuggets in here around fear and, like I said, inspiration, intuition, and I highly recommend this. But these last two books I did do videos on as well, if you want to hear a little bit more detail. And I think that's it. One last thing that I'll leave you with is that I think as I start writing, the last video that I do each month, I'm going to try to get better about doing each week. I am going to share with you where I am in my writing process, and maybe that will help you, or you'll find it completely entertaining as I share what happened that month, the highs and the lows, perhaps. So I think I may do that at the last video of each month. So stay tuned for the end of April. And I think that's a wrap. Thank you for joining me. I hope you are finding this helpful in some way, and I will keep working on my editing and all that, because it's a learning process and takes time. And I'm 53 now. So anyway, that's a wrap. Thank you, and have a wonderful week until I see you again. Be well and keep stepping forward.